I mean, this is a bike that's I mean, it feels like a cross-country bike, right? But it can do trail duty like incredibly well. Like very confidence inspiring on even like the higher speed stuff that would normally be pretty chattery on a cross-country bike, like that Epic Evo, for example. You feel like you're coming undone through that whole section right there. And here, feels stable, feels good. Hey guys, welcome back to MTB Yum Yum. My name's Jason, and today we're riding a Cannondale. And this is not a new bike for Cannondale. This is the Cannondale Scalpel SE. This bike actually came out a few years ago, and I just have never gotten the opportunity to ride it until now. Chris at Salt Cycles, who's a Cannondale dealer, said, I've got a Scalpel SE demo bike. You're welcome to come grab this thing and take it for a rip. I've had it for about a week now. I've had so much fun riding it. And for those of you who are familiar with Cannondale and cross-country bikes, the Scalpel, when I hear the word Scalpel, it just, my ears start hearing, okay, this is a race bike, you know? The Scalpel from Cannondale has been a hardcore, you know, race bike. It's got race DNA running through its veins, so to speak. And in as much as this is a Scalpel, it's got an SE at the end, which might be SE like Sports Edition, maybe. I don't know what SE stands for, but it should be TE for Trail Edition, because this, in as much as it's a Scalpel, this feels like a bona fide trail bike. It reminds me, for those of you who've watched my channel, top shelf for me is the Ibis Ripley, as far as my favorite trail bike of all time. I could recommend an Ibis Ripley to anyone, and I've owned 3 of them over the last 4 years, right? I don't currently own one, but it's an incredible trail bike. This has so much similarity with that Ibis Ripley that when I got on it, I could have been blindfolded and I could have thought, man, is this a Ripley that I'm on? It just feels so similar. The geometry is a little different, but the way that it rides is really just this incredible, competent trail bike that still feels very zippy and very fast. That's that Scalpel part of the Scalpel SE. And then the SE part is that makes it feel like a Ripley. We're going to talk about so much today. I have a lot to unpack. I've been riding this for a week. I picked up this bike from Salt Cycles in Sandy, Utah, and they are today's video sponsor. We're going to talk about how this bike climbs, how it descends, who this bike is for, and kind of how it compares to other bikes in this category. Just off the top of my mind, my current bike that I personally own is a Pivot Mach 4, which is kind of a cross-country-ish short travel trail bike. I'm going to compare this to that. I recently rode the Specialized Epic Evo. I'm going to compare this to that as well. I used to own the Ibis XE, which is a cross-country bike. We're going to talk about that bike a little bit today too. So stick around and enjoy this little test ride and review that we're going to do on the Scalpel SE today. When you look at the numbers on this Scalpel SE, like on paper, they look similar to like the bike I rode last year, which was the Ibis XE, right? That's 100 millimeters in the rear and 120 millimeter Fox step cast fork. And on paper, it looks really similar, but out here on the trail riding it, it feels more like the Ibis Ripley, which is 120 millimeters travel in the rear and 130 millimeters fork. So I've had a couple days on this Scalpel SE so far, and man, it kind of is right in between those two bikes. And I've owned both those bikes and spent a lot of time on them, so that's maybe why those two bikes are coming to the forefront of my mind as I ride this thing. But they're everywhere. It probably doesn't climb as good as my Pivot Mach 4 SL, which is like my personal like cross-country short travel trail bike right now. But it's not far off, if anything. And you know, maybe not quite as efficient or quick feeling, racy feeling as like the Specialized Epic Evo that I've recently ridden or the Ibis XE that I used to own. But the 2 times I've ridden this bike downhill so far, I would say it feels more confidence inspiring, more forgiving, like just more easygoing. than any of those bikes I've described besides the Ripley. And I would say, I don't have a Ripley right now, but I would say if I rode them back to back, man, they'd probably be pretty close. Okay, first things first, let's just get the group set, the kit, and the geometry out of the way on this bike. It's a 120 millimeter fork RockShox SID, and then 120 millimeters RockShox out back. So 120, 120. It's kind of a short travel trail bike. It's borderline cross-country suspension numbers, and then geometry is a 67-degree head tube angle and 74-degree seat tube angle on a size medium. I'm 5'8". It's got a 430 millimeter reach, which on paper kind of seems a little short, right? But with that slack 74-degree seat tube angle and a 50 millimeter stem, again at 5'8" on a medium, it's perfect. It's tidy enough that I feel like not too, like it's not so big that the bike feels like it's taking me for a ride, or that I'm like sitting on top of this bike. I feel like I'm taking this bike for a ride. I like this size bike. The wheelbase is kind of short. It's kind of a little shorter even than my personal Pivot Mach 4 and even the Ibis XE, but that's what gives this bike so much brightness and life out there on the trail. It just really feels zippy. And maybe that's a great segue into climbing. I mean, climbing on this bike is a breeze. It feels incredibly efficient. That RockShox shock has an open position and a lockout position, and I just left it in the open position the whole time, even on the pavement on the way up to the trail. I did mess with it, locking it out here and there, and you can feel it obviously, but it's so efficient just how it is. It just boogies right up the trail. The bike feels very fast. I mean, just very fast. I get on it, I just feel energized. I don't feel like, oh man, this bike's gonna be a lot of work today. And that's the fun thing about this bike. You get to the top of the trail and start heading down. That's where this bike reminds me so much. If you've watched this channel at all, you'll know I have just talked about the Ibis Ripley to death. I've owned 3 of them over the last 4 years. I absolutely love the Ripley. And this bike, if you blindfolded me and put me on this bike, I might have a hard time telling the difference between this and the Ripley. It's just, this is such a competent descender, given the kind of cross-country geometry, kind of given the name Scalpel. I mean, that Scalpel, you hear that name and it just makes me think of a cross-country race bike, some guy in Lycra, you know? And it's really not. This is such a competent descending trail bike, and I think it's because of the way that this frame is. When I first looked at this frame, I thought it was a single pivot bike. There's no horse link. I mean, normally a Cannondale is a horse link bike, right? And it's gonna have that little pivot point down there below the rear axle. In this case, they've gotten rid of that in lieu for this this carbon kind of flexi chainstay right here. So that's how the bike works. On the downhill, it's very open, very active feeling. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel harsh or chattery in the least. It's very open, very stable feeling. That's the biggest, for sure, that's the biggest surprise for me. I don't know if I went into this week of test riding this bike with that powerful stigma of the name Scalpel with this bike. I thought it was going to be kind of harsh and chattery and just kind of a lot to handle, kind of like the way the Specialized Epic Evo is. I mean, it's the Epic Evo's over here and this is way over here, closer to the Ibis Ripley, for example. It's just such a competent descending trail bike, and it's easy to ride. Such a neutral, kind of balanced riding position. I never felt like I was in the wrong spot. I never felt like I had to get too far forward or have to ride off the back. It was just very intuitive. Manualing this bike, which I'm not great at manualing, but I can manual sections of the trail. So easy on this bike. When I do wheelies in the front yard with the kids, for example, I went on a ride around the neighborhood after I got the suspension set up the first day I had it, and I could wheelie this thing all day long. It's just, I don't know, I just felt right at home on the bike, which was a surprise to me, because again, I think because of the stigma of that name Scalpel, but it's the SE part of this bike that really comes to the forefront of the experience riding this bike. And man, I just had such a blast riding this bike. The other thing I wanted to say is, like, this is the SE1. I think there's like a 1, a 2, and an Ultimate. In any case, This is the One, which is like about a $6,000 bike. And when Chris told me, this is a $6,000 bike, and talk to the viewer a little bit about that. Make sure you mention that, because I don't always talk about like the kit on the bike. But this one for $6,000, I'm blown away. It's 25 pounds, 9 ounces in a size medium. It has a full Shimano XT group set, which including the brakes, which is really, really nice. It has in-house Cannondale carbon wheels, which are not pingy and harsh. Like sometimes you ride a carbon wheel and it feels kind of harsh and it kind of deflects off of like bits of trail or roots or rocks or something. These feel very damp and compliant. And soft. Now I'm not sure, it's hard to differentiate between whether it's the wheels or the suspension or the frame. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts on a bike, right? But my experience after a week of riding this is those wheels feel really pretty soft compared to most carbon wheels that I ride, which is really nice. I really like that. So carbon wheels with DT Swiss hubs. Oh my gosh, you guys, I can't tell you how nice it is to have DT Swiss hubs. So there's a good and a bad part about this. For $6,000 you get the DT Swiss hubs, but it comes with that annoying 18 engagement, 18 points of engagement. It was miserable. After the first ride, I went back to Salt Cycles and I was like, Chris, dude, I can't ride the engagement on this hub. We pulled the rear cassette off. We put the 54 tooth engagement on there that comes on like a DT Swiss 240 hub, for example. Oh man, so much better. So I upgraded the rear hub, for my test ride experience, and that made a huge difference. But you can't do that on most wheels. Most wheels just have some generic hub, and you get what you get, and you don't cause a fit. But this upgraded, baby, it's so nice. I also upgraded. It comes with the Cannondale in-house dropper post. It's called the down low dropper post, and on a size medium it was 125 millimeters of drop, which is not good enough for anyone. And so I rode it maybe 2 days like that, and I was like, I'm not dealing with that anymore. So went back to Salt Cycles and said, Chris, I got to put a different dropper on. So we put this Bike Yoke 160 millimeter dropper, and I'm 5'8". I don't know what my inseam is on my legs, but I've got like about an inch almost of seat tube sticking out. I probably could have done the 185 millimeter drop Bike Yoke dropper, but I wanted to be safe and went with the 160 just because I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to fit. So those are the only upgrades I did to the bike. 25.5 pounds. I mean, let me just talk about that for 1 minute. Again, if you watch the channel, you'll know how much I love the Ibis Ripley. And I always built my Ibis Ripleys up really lightweight. So if you bought an XT, like a comparable Ibis Ripley with XT group set and carbon wheels and everything, you'd probably be about 27 pounds is my guess. 25.5 pounds. To get a Ripley down to 25.5 pounds, to be the same weight as this with the same tires and everything, you're 10 grand. All day, I know, I've built 3 of them. You're 10 grand to get the components down light enough to be 25.5 pounds, which is a great way to ride a Ripley. It feels really fast and zippy. This bike comes 25.5 pounds and $6,100. And the best part is right now, Chris at Salt Cycles, who's the sponsor of this channel, so you're gonna hear a little advertisement from me about them, which is easy to do. I love those guys. Right now, they're up to 25% off on this bike. That brings this bike down to like $4,500 or $4,600. You cannot find a bike anywhere on planet Earth that will do what this does, not that I've ridden anyway, with carbon wheels, full XT group set, even a carbon, this is a nice carbon bar. I mean, really nice. There's some things I would upgrade if you decide to end up buying this bike, right? I'd upgrade that rear hub. That's a no-brainer for like 100 or 125 bucks to put that 54 tooth DT Swiss ratchet in the back. Oh my gosh, it makes all the difference in the world. That's a no-brainer. And then the dropper post, if you can live with a 125 dropper post, I'm not sure how good that down low dropper is. I've never used it before, but I don't know. For me, 250 bucks for a Bike Yoke dropper post upgrade, that makes total sense. Or I think he said you could do a Fox transfer dropper post upgrade for like 150 bucks. So in any case, at 25% off, or I guess I'm supposed to say up to 25% off, it depends on what you end up doing, I guess, it just seems like a no-brainer. And I started to think about like who this bike is for. You know, one of my best buddies, Luke, his daughter, Lily, is ready for a new bike. She outgrew her bike and she's racing in the NICA program. And she's ready to go from a small to a medium bike. And like, in my mind, she's on a hardtail right now. I think he spent like $2,800 for that hardtail. It's a nice bike, you know, but for him, he could probably sell that $2,800 bike that he bought for like $2,000 on the used market and upgrade to this for $4,600. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine how much more confidence his daughter Lily would have being on a full suspension bike. First of all, it just, I put my daughter who races in NICA on a full suspension bike. She's on an Ibis XE. And when she went from a hardtail to a full suspension bike, she really got some downhill confidence for sure, 1,000%. And you know, 25 pounds, and I'm sure the size small even weighs a little less. I think about the high school mountain biker. And I know you're thinking, man, $4,600 for a high schooler kid, maybe that's too much money. But the reality is, dude, you would not believe how much money people are spending on their kids for dance and for all the other stuff. I mean, we're kind of getting out of the review here, and I'm talking more about the idea of who this bike is for. But I think about the high school or middle school mountain biker. This is a bike that they can race on, but is all trail worthy. I mean, this has incredible trail manners for such a cross-country oriented bike. So it's a bike that they can take down. We're in Utah, so you can take it down to Moab, Utah, or St. George, or go ride up in Park City or Deer Valley, or ride the Crest Trail, or some of these trails that require more than just a little cross-country bike. And I mean, this, if you rode this back to back with my daughter's Ibis XE, this is 1,000%. I mean, I've put probably 1,500 miles or more on an Ibis XE. This is more competent descending bike, for sure. It just feels more controlled, more damp. It feels safer. You'll have more confidence on this bike descending. And so I also think about some of these NICA kids who are racing cross country kind of for the first time, the first couple of years of racing as kids. I think about their parents who maybe have never ridden much, or are just getting back into riding now that their kids are racing in the NICA program. That makes so much sense. My buddy Dan Brower, he's got 2 kids in the NICA program, and Dan has told me, man, I'm sick of riding my big bike. He rides an Ibis Ripmo, which is, you know, like 150 in the rear, 160 in the front. And he's trying to keep up with these high school kids twice a week when he goes to high school mountain biking practice. Man, Daniel would benefit so much from having a bike like this because he can still come ride trails fast with me and our buddies who have bigger bikes. But then he has a bike that's more appropriate for riding with the high school cross-country mountain bike team. Those are the people who I think of. If you're a hardcore racer, you know, maybe you go with the actual Scalpel, which I haven't ridden in a while, or maybe you go with the Ibis XE, or even the Specialized Epic Evo feels much more race-oriented. This bike still feels fast and like a race bike, but man, when you turn it downhill, it's far more rewarding than that Specialized Epic Evo. It's unbelievable. I'm blown away by this bike. So much confidence on the downhill. Comparing it to my Mach 4 SL, it's the same conversation. My Mach 4 SL is $10,000. And it weighs maybe a little bit less than this, I guess, but it's $10,000. This, at the price point they're offering these at, it's bananas. It's such a good value. I think my Pivot Mach 4 probably climbs a little bit better, maybe. Yeah, I would say so. But I don't know if it's $5,000 better. And that's subjective. Everyone's in a different financial situation. I don't want to get into that too much. But the reality is, this bike boogies on the uphill, and on the downhill, tons of confidence. And so easy to ride too. I had a blast on this bike. Yeah, I think when my son Ryan, you know, in another year gets to the age where he's going to need a bike more like this would definitely be something I would put my son Ryan on 100%, because he loves to go hit jumps and go fast and riding trails, but I know he's going to want to race on the high school team or on the middle school team when he gets there. So this would be such a good option. My wife Marcy's looking for a new bike. She's been riding the Ibis Mojo 4, which is a 27.5 bike, and she's been curious if she should get a 29er and something that maybe is a little faster to keep up with the middle school kids. Now that my daughter Elan's probably maybe even faster than my wife now, maybe on the uphills. She's an 8th grader and she's getting very fast. And so this is something that would help her keep up a little bit better. So those are the people I think about. Maybe not a full-blown racer guy, but definitely someone who wants to do some racing or at least keep up with the race kids and go ride some legit trails. I can't think of a trail I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this bike on in Utah. I might change out tires if I go to St. George or to Moab, or I'm gonna go ride Deer Valley. I might put some heavier duty tires, but these tires have been incredible. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I could talk all day long about this bike, the same way I used to talk about the Giant Trance. You used to be able to get this aluminum Giant Trance for like $3,200. It was just like it always blew my mind when I rode the Giant Trance. I was like, man, that's such a good bike for such little money, relative to how much people are spending on bikes these days. And so the Giant Trance was always in the back of my mind, like, man, that's the best bike for $3,000, for $3,200. Well, I guess that's what's been so eye-opening to me. As I've been riding, it's embarrassing to say almost, but I've been riding like $9,000, $10,000 bikes for the last 2 or 3 years. That's a lot of money, but you get a really, really nice bike that's lightweight. It costs a lot of money to get these bikes lightweight. So when Chris told me, man, $4,500, $4,600, whatever, 25% off of 6,000, my mind was blown. I was like, man, what have I been spending all my money on? I could just buy one of these. Anyway, needless to say, I've been very impressed with this bike. The last thing I'll say is just descending on this bike, the whole bike stays very quiet. And not quiet like volume or noise, but like it's just calm. It just stays calm and quiet and stable. And it feels very damp and controlled in the back. It feels, and I just rode that Specialized Epic Evo a week ago or a week and a half ago. And I had that bike for a couple days. This bike feels so much safer. Oh my gosh, when I start hitting those 25 mile per hour kind of range on the downhill, this bike feels so safe and so confidence inspiring. In the Epic Evo, I just felt like I was on ice. Like it was just so sketchy, it just got sketchy so quick, and this just really hasn't. My buddy Tyler, and I'm gonna embed some of the conversations I had with Tyler in here at the end of this video, so stick around for that. Tyler's owned this bike for over a year now, and I don't know why I've never borrowed it from him. I just have been too busy doing my other stuff, but he's owned it for a year, and he's like, yeah, Jay, this is the bike. So anyway, enjoy his comments here at the end of this video. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the description down below. I do a really good job for about a week or so after the video is published on my channel of answering those questions and engaging in those comments. And so put any questions there, and then pay attention to what Tyler says here. He's owned the bike for a year. He's a very, very high level rider, incredible rider. And so you'll be able to hear his experience owning this bike. And then thank you to Salt Cycles. I mean, if you're looking for a bike to do some cross-country racing a little bit, but you still want a bike that's trail worthy and has good trail manners, I don't think you can look much further than this. I used to point people to the Ibis Ripley, which I still do, but this is lighter weight than the Ibis Ripley. I feel like it's 99% as competent and capable on the downhill. Probably climbs better, maybe, possibly, than the Ripley. It's been a while since I've ridden one, but what a neat bike that this is. It came with like a little tool integration thing here. I ended up taking it off because I'm left-handed, and the way you put the water bottle here on the left side, it was kind of getting hung up on this little rubber thing that you're supposed to put around, like a CO2 thing. I'm trying to think if there's any like nuanced things about the bike that are worth mentioning. The bike's quiet. It just feels very damp and controlled on the downhill. Upgrade the dropper posts. For me anyway, I want the extra long drop, and then the rear hub. That's about it. Stock bar and stem feel great. The suspension has been, I mean, after riding the exact same suspension on the Specialized Epic Evo 2 weeks ago and thinking, man, that was a demanding, harsh bike. This is just like so welcome, and it's the same suspension. It's the RockShox Sid Select Plus. What a deal. If you're looking for a Cannondale Scalpel SE, call my friends over at Salt Cycles, ask for Chris or Jason or Piper. They'd be happy to help you out with this. And like I said, they're up to 25% off. The last thing I'm going to say, and I know I could just keep talking on and on and on about this, is everyone who has seen this bike was like, dude, That bike is so sick looking. And it is, this Ferrari red. I don't know what they actually call it, but I've been calling it the Ferrari. It looks so cool. It's lightweight, it's fast. Very cool bike. Anyway, stick around for some comments from my buddy Tyler. I know this video got a little long. I had a lot to say about this, and I'll probably do an update video here in a little bit about this just because I've had so much fun riding this bike. I don't even want to give it back. And I haven't been riding my Pivot Mach 4 since I got this. It's been a lot of fun. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll link the phone number and everything for Salt Cycles down here. Give those guys a call. It's a great way to support the channel too. They are a huge support of what I'm doing here on YouTube, and it's I'm really grateful to those guys. So thanks a lot, guys. Man, we're putting down a burner today too. That's fun. Nice. That's fun. All right, so Tyler, you guys have seen Tyler in my videos. He always rides with me, but he bought the Cannondale Scalpel SE like a year ago, right?
Yep.
And then you also own, because you have a son who races NICA, who you also own a Specialized Epic Evo. That's what I rode, and you guys saw that video a couple weeks ago. So speak a little bit about the two bikes. And I mean, they look like they're similar on paper, pretty similar.
Yeah, suspension wise, you're like what, 120 versus 110 in the rear. The front's about the same, I think.
Yep.
On both bikes, and they're both 120.
And both have RockShox Select Plus forks and SID suspension, yeah. So
yeah, suspension's the same that way. So they're totally different bikes, though. I would say, like that Specialized definitely wants to just rip up hills. Like it begs to be pushed like all the time.
Yep.
It feels more like a hardtail, like for sure. So you get the benefits of going uphill with a hardtail, which is super fast. Like it is a fast bike, definitely faster than the Scalpel, I'd say, on the uphill.
Yep.
But on the flip side, is as soon as you go downhill, it's demanding. It feels like a hardtail. Like it's not very forgiving. If you make a mistake, you pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's a very like on the edge bike, which is great. Like if you're racing, like that's the bike for you. It
has that, like when you get on it, and I tried to explain this on my video, it's got race DNA. It just feels like a race bike.
It does, yeah.
Yep.
It just wants to rip. Like,
yep.
Doesn't want to be ridden slow. And then on the flip side, like the Cannondale, the Scalpel SE is very forgiving. Like it feels very damp. It feels like you're rolling like on DHF tires, like front and rear. It's just like so much more soft and forgiving.
It's weird. I was taken back.
Yeah.
On my first ride, I was like, what the heck? Like, I would actually like to ride this back to back against like an Ibis Ripley.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to bring up. It feels like the Ibis Ripley. Like it really does.
Isn't that weird?
It's probably between like the XE and the Ripley, I would say. Like it's efficient more like the XE, but it's kind of damp more like the Ripley. So it fits kind of that in-between bike, I would say. Yeah,
but the problem is like, I would throw $10,000 at my Ibis Ripleys to get them down to 25.5 pounds.
Yes.
This one comes stock.
Yeah.
25.5 pounds.
Yeah. So much cheaper. Like it is so much cheaper. And it rides so good. Like it really does. It's like a Ripley. Like if you've ridden a Ripley before, like you know how well they ride. And like you can slam this bike down hills. Like I've taken it down Jacob's Ladder and thrown down really good times on it, like comfortably good times. What's your fastest time on the Cannondale Scalpel SE down Jacobs? I think I'm like at a 217. I accidentally had the rear shock locked out once and did a 218, which is just like
bananas.
stupid. And I thought like, oh, it felt a little harsh, but I was cruising. So I checked my rear suspension and it was locked out. And I'd say it still felt better than the Specialized Epic Evo, even with it locked out.
That's crazy.
So I don't know if it's like this little, like you have like this little place here in the back that's really thin.
Yeah.
That gives it some, I think, some extra dampening. I don't know how that exactly works.
Well, that's what's so weird. Is I thought this,
good.
yeah, I thought this was a single pivot, like normal cross-country style bike, but it's not. They're saying that this carbon flexi chainstay here is acting like a pivot down there, like it would on a horse-link bike. So, I mean, it makes sense. It rides really open, really active, so no chatter.
Yeah.
And a 218, just to give you guys some perspective, my fastest time on an enduro type, like all mountain bike, my fastest time ever down Jacobs is 222. So that's 5 seconds faster, which is an eternity. I can't go 1 second faster, let alone 5 seconds faster on a quasi cross-country short travel trail bike.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
I mean, the tires are fast for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, it's an awesome bike, like as far as like overall, if you want to race, if you want to enjoy your trails, you can pretty much go anywhere with this bike, kind of a thing. I wouldn't say like on the super steep stuff, but like if you're just doing a lot of trail riding and you want to get into racing a little bit, like this is your bike, especially for the price point.
And this is the bike your son Cade is actually racing NICA on, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel like it'd be a super competitive race bike. Like it's light enough, it's efficient enough, but then again, you get the benefit of, hey, it's actually fun to ride on the trails.
Yeah, I think
You're not
about,
getting beat up.
I think about like, for some reason when I rode it, I was thinking about like the dads or the moms out there who want to go ride the Crest Trail or Moab or St. George. So they need a trail bike, but they're now racing, or they're now being a ride leader in the NICA program. They have to keep up with all these fast kids. This is a bike that blurs the lines probably better than most. Can still do trail duty, but it's fast.
Yeah.
And it can go do cross-country racing.
Yeah, I intend to throw like some beefier tires on this and take my son, who's in NICA, down to Moab. Like it'll definitely handle it, no problem at all with just a little bit beefier tire.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's definitely a versatile bike for sure.
Yeah, I just, like I said, Tyler, like the thing that I was most blown away with is like how, I keep using the word quiet, but quiet is referring to like noise and volume, and that's not what I'm talking about, but it's quiet, like it's just so damp and controlled back here. It's like, it really surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Combination probably of everything, you know, it's probably the frame, the tires, the rims, like it feels very in control and feels great. It's a nice bike. Well put together too. It did a good job.
And for the money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hard to beat it for the money. Like you look at any other brands right now, and with carbon rims, carbon frame, like you're going to be at least $8,000-9,000 for something that's somewhat close to that, right?
That'll do something like this.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, you swapped out what, the dropper post?
Dropper to a 150 comes with like a 125, so it's just the one up. Just gives you a little bit more spacing, and then obviously just my own saddle.
Yeah.
I did throw a shorter stem. I think it comes with a 50, and I went to a 40.
Okay.
That's really all I've changed on it.
Yeah, that's what I would change too. You can see my dropper here. You know, I've got a good, 2 inches or more on this 125 millimeter travel dropper post. I would want at least a 150 on there like what Tyler has, or maybe if I could fit a 175 in there, I might as well go for that.